So you, we've been working together. You came to me in a pretty severe situation, binging, right? Right in the middle of like binge, needing control. You've worked with me before. You've been out of the crazy train and something happened. You went back into crazy train and then we got you back out. So this was kind of the first real test, right? You went to Nashville with a bunch of girlfriends on vacation. And I'd said, how'd you do with the food and everything? And you were like, I did okay. There were times I did overeat. And then you brought it up. I didn't say anything. You had said, and I did notice as I observed and looked back at those moments that I was totally negotiating. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, of course. Overeating, we are super conscious about eating. We're conscious about, our brains are very much wired to be conscious specific to eating because of that survival mechanism around we need enough food. But it doesn't just become unconscious when we have enough food. It's still very conscious about, on the other side, how much are we going to be eating? It's not just do we have abundance. It's how much do we really need? The hunger scale is the solution to me. For me, and what I teach is like, that's your guide to know how much you should be eating. So it's not like there is no guide and you're just eating numbly, which to me is like impossible anyways, because of how the brain consciously is aware of how much we're eating. It's just as conscious. And so you're aware of when your need for food physically is gone, and you're aware of how you negotiate for that food, which to me is just as biologically evolutionary as our impulsivity to eat when there's not enough, right? It goes both ways. Impulsivity to eat when there's not enough, and then this weird conscious negotiation when there's more. Which to me is a sign that you still live in a degree of famine, right? In that moment, you probably felt that if you didn't give yourself the freedom to eat, it would have felt depriving. Because everybody else is eating and they don't have any limits and they're not listening to hunger. They're eating until they're full. And I don't want to feel restricted, right? Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Second ago, I was like, I gotta get this on camera. What's your input on this little discussion?
Well, and when I was negotiating, I just did spend a lot of time trying to notice and put perspective on this, and I'm thinking, you know what? I would not go in and go to the bathroom if I didn't feel like I really needed to go, and I wouldn't sit there and, after, because my body, if I'm really listening to my body and doing what it's, telling me I need to do. Mm-hmm. Well, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you. I want to hear what you're saying.
And so I thought, well, no, I wouldn't, and then there were still, everybody's got, like I said, snacks out and everything. I'm like, well, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I negotiated again.
It's a sign you may have felt deprived if you didn't participate.
You know what? That is it exactly. As I'm trying to explain it right now, I'm thinking, what would I have done with myself or I wasn't participating with what they're participating in.
Mm-hmm. The problem is that that thought is designed around the quantity of food, right? Mm-hmm. Because what you really needed physically was less than the amount that you felt everybody else was getting. I used a parallel to drinking alcohol. So if we were drinking wine together and I was starting to feel, acidic, I like red wine. Mm-hmm. And I started to feel drunk, that would be like me saying, well, everybody else is drinking this bottle of wine we spent money on, and I'm not going to get any more, even though physically I'm starting to have a negative response to that alcohol. If I drink more, I'm going to have a hangover. Right? So how I say I can't have any more is to let that wine go. I don't have to drink it to enjoy the environment. The food isn't defining the environment. The people are. So some of this is residual, a residual relationship that you've created with food because of the dieting that you've been doing, right? And I had said to you a little bit ago, I said, okay, at some point you push the stop button, which is, I cannot eat anymore. I am so full. Get it away, right? You're at that 8 or 9 number on the hunger scale. And you had said, Robin, how do you do this? And I said, well, I push the stop button at 6. I pushed the stop earlier. It's the same stop button.
Yeah.
No one there knows that I'm not physically in pain to have to stop. To me, stop is when if I feel fullness coming on, I don't want it. It takes away from the whole experience because you physically feel like shit. That's like being drunk. Like you learn how to stop, even though when you're drinking alcohol, the influence of alcohol makes you go, this is so amazing. I have to keep on drinking. Right? And then you just go, you go over that cliff and you think, why didn't someone tell me to stop? Well, at some point, you have to be conscious under the influence, which you are. This is the thing. We're all conscious under the influence of food. This idea that you are numb isn't actually true. You're confused. You're just confused when you're binging. You're not numb. You're confused. Because it's you're negotiating for it. That's part of how we respond to food. You're negotiating. So that isn't numb. That's logic.
Right.
That's actual intelligence engaging in how you deserve the food. You're just being a victim and a martyr in that position, specific to feeling inadequate for some environment. So there may have been a level of inadequacy you felt in that moment to push the stop button. And the other thing, too, that I find when people recover is that when they've been restricted to such a degree, because would you agree that you were an extremist dieter? Like you had been radicalized in dieting?
Yes.
Okay. So
I would agree.
The problem with that is you have experienced that feeling of being deprived to an extreme level. So can you see why you would want to avoid that feeling going into this type of environment? Because before it would end up in a binge. Whereas this time you gave yourself the lenience. You did overeat, but it was nowhere close to the same quantity it would have been if you were still a radical dieter.
Right.
Is that right?
Exactly, yes.
So to me, it's not, this is part of actual recovery. You have to go out there and you have to be social and you have to put yourself in these environments where it's highly emotional. I'm assuming you were drinking alcohol too. No. Okay, no alcohol.
One night we were at a Mexican restaurant and I had 1 glass of sangria. But other than that, no.
Okay, drinking. So it wasn't like, like wine tasting or going to a bar and taking a bunch of shots and See, that would be a whole other environment to go into. I just, I know for me personally, I'm not there the difference between the 6 and the 8 is not as much fun. 6 and the 8 on the hunger scale, how full you're getting.
Uh-huh.
I'm aligned with going out and having fun, going out and dancing with my girlfriends, going out and enjoying the environment and people watching and having awesome conversation and laughing and enjoying myself. That's what I'm aligned with. The food is also important. I am a foodie. I really love good food. So that's important too, but I am not going The difference between the 6 and the 8 is that it's miserable. Physically, it doesn't feel good, especially when you're not used to overeating. That's the other thing you'll notice because you've been eating the hunger, is that fullness is more uncomfortable. Before, you would have put down twice as much food, been extremely uncomfortable, but it wouldn't have probably created such like, oh, that was a mistake. And the other thing too is you probably, did you negotiate with I'll eat less later, or that the body will fix this over time?
Probably both.
Yeah, and that feeds the overeating.
One or the other.
That's a weird thing, like to think that, and that's conditioning from the diet industry, because they make you think that what you ate yesterday we can fix today, which isn't true. It's crazy because you're creating hormonal compensations in that moment. There's no way you can get rid of that hormonal compensation except for to not do it, right?
Right.
How the thyroid responds and the adrenal responds and your ovary responds and how your fat responds. I mean, that happens immediately, right? So even if you're a bulimic, the thought that purging it's going to change anything is just, it's actually just, emotional. It's an emotional thing, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I want you to think about going back in your mind into that environment, and what would it have been like to push the stop button ahead of time?
Yeah. I mean, it would have been, but I'm thinking, well, it's easy for me to say right now, yeah, I could have done that. I mean, if I'd have just stopped halfway through, it would have been much better.
Well, less painful. We're talking about the physical discomfort right now, aren't we? Because that's really, to me, the downside. That's the downside. That's it. There's no emotion. There's no judgment. You shouldn't feel bad.
Right.
You know, overeating is worthy of, like, feeling bad about yourself. To me, that isn't really, I mean, that's, it's not, it just, you already have your consequence. You get the consequence immediately. So you just have to really think, is this how I want to feel? So you have to almost disengage with the food. You have to pry your fingers off of it for 2 seconds and realize that, are you being deprived? You know, the question is, are you being deprived? Right? Emotionally, because physically there is no need. So emotionally, if you disengage in that moment, are you actually being deprived if you are doing it to eliminate a physical pain? No. Yeah. So one of the things I do is I'm very consciously aware of the physical pain. I do not want to go on a date with my husband and be all sexy and be full and uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
I want to be sated. I want to enjoy that food. I want to taste it and engage with my husband that way. But I'm going to push the stop button at 6. The difference between 6 and 8 is maybe 5 bites. I don't know, 10 bites, somewhere in between 5 and 10 bites, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just think about that for a second.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Give or take 2. Yeah.
So if I push the stop button at 6, there's 5 to 10 more bites that could go in a to-go box, and I could eat it later. But is that really depriving if I'm preventing physical discomfort? Right? Am I not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the physical, you should get to the point where the physical discomfort is not worth it as much as, like a hangover.
Correct. It's exactly the same awareness you need to have under the influence of alcohol. To be like, I do not want to be drunk. I do not want to have a hangover. Even though you're under the influence, you're still consciously aware of the consequences, because there are consequences. And eating excessively has a physical consequence. It feels like shit.
Yep.
You know, so even if it's, and so I'm consciously aware as I'm eating the food, whatever it is. I don't have any of that. A lot of times too, I think it can be confusing if you're heavily mentally engaged with the food. Mentally being, well, this has this many carbs and this has this much fat and this has a ton of calories, so I can eat more of this. So you're not even engaging with how the body's responding to the food. You're engaging with how your beliefs respond to the food. So that might have been there too. Like you might have been dissecting, well, if I'm going to eat this food, I have to organize, I'm going to prioritize based on what's healthier and what's not healthier. And I'm going to, and so you're not listening to actually what do you really want? And you're not responding to how the body is responding to the food. You're responding to, I should only have 2 bites of this. So you're restricting the food within the freedom you're giving yourself. I'm going to repeat that. You might have been restricting the food within the freedom you gave yourself to eat it. So it's like that freedom to eat it, but I got to restrict it. And then you wonder why you still have this weird impulsivity to continue to overeat. Right? I'm going to give myself the freedom to eat the cookies because I can eat them now. I'm giving myself the freedom without shame and guilt, but I can only have 2. I can only have 1. I can only have 1. And so it's restrictive still. And you wonder why the brain still responds to that. I mean, that's how sensitive this conscious idea of food is to our psyche. People who tend to restrict with their freedom tend to overeat. You're not binging. Right? Mm-hmm. So there's an improvement in terms of how, the level of excessiveness that you're consuming, but it's still, you can still tell, I'm still overeating. Well, you're probably restricting your freedom. So I don't ever do that. I'm always aware. I don't know how much I'm going to eat with whatever I chose, whether it's eggs Benedict, whether it's, waffles, or maybe it's just, pumpkin pie or a cheeseburger or the soup or salad. And I don't know. And I really don't know how much my body's going to need until I'm presently eating the food and I'm feeling how the body's responding to it. Right? The pleasure of the food is my goal. Every time I eat, I'm looking for the most pleasurable experience with whatever I'm choosing. So that has nothing to do with it either. That's my goal 100% of the time. Once it gets down to how much I'm going to be eating, I don't know. I never know. I don't know until I'm eating it. I don't even know how much coffee I'm going to drink until I feel how my body's responding to it. Because maybe, the coffee I'm drinking is watered down, or it's really strong, or it's depending on, do I use real sugar, stevia? Am I putting, cream in it? I don't know how my body's going to respond if I use milk versus half and half versus cream. Make sense? It's like, how do you know how much coffee you drink? Well, you listen to your body as you're drinking it.
Exactly.
And I don't feel deprived if I don't finish the cup of coffee, because I don't want to feel wired or have a stomach response. That feels bad, right?
Right.
So more than likely you were heavily loaded mentally with this one. Like you went back into, I shouldn't eat that. Oh my God. Even with the hunger scale, I'm starting to not feel hungry. Oh my God, I shouldn't have that.
I don't know that there were a few times, I shouldn't have that, and I went ahead anyways, Yeah, there was the I shouldn't have that, as I'm thinking back.
Yeah, that's the diet.
There were times when I just shouldn't have that.
Because it wasn't healthy?
But I thought it was more because I wasn't hungry.
Well, that could be. It could be that you're just not hungry. Yeah. But you might have positioned yourself in that moment to be a victim. That's the other thing. People who position themselves to be poor me, they tend to have major issues with abusiveness, right?
Yeah.
Because once you go into victimization...
I think the feeling I was feeling at the time was, I'm really not hungry and I should not be eating this because I am not hungry at all. And I don't know what that was.
I don't know. Well, making the hunger scale a diet, it could have been, if you eat this, you're going to gain a bunch of weight, or I don't know. I mean, you have to go back into that thought process yourself and really open yourself to the feelings you're experiencing and try to explain it. Try to verbalize what it was, feeling, you may have had some idea around or some expectation in a vacation that you shouldn't ever feel deprived. So if you're not hungry and they're eating, that feeling like, well, I'm on vacation. I deserve this. I want it. You know, you're not necessarily holding on to the reality that this is going to come at a cost. I'm going to feel uncomfortable. Physically, this is going to hurt.
Right.
So that might be the missing link in this, is that you're not consciously aware that if you choose to eat that at this moment, you can end up being in pain. So are there times where I'm not hungry and I want to try something? Yeah, and I do. I actually will have a few bites, but I'm not going to eat I'm always aware of that stop button. I do not want to be full at all.
Right.
There are times I'm not hungry and I'll share a glass of wine with a friend, right? Do I have to finish the bottle? No, I don't want to feel bad. Physically, there's a boundary I'm keeping myself in. And it's not because I need to control myself. It's because I don't want to feel sick. It really is a matter of I don't like the consequences at all. It's like putting your hand on a burner. I don't like that. So I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I don't get any sense of I'm so valuable because I can control myself. There's none of that.
Yeah.
It's really just,
right.
I just don't like to be uncomfortable. It's a personal decision. I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
I know.
I don't think, does anyone like being overfull?
Well, yes. Emotionally, people do. There is an emotional need for that, though. Some people feel they don't feel safe unless they've had enough food. Like, it makes them feel safe. So that's the opposite of what you've been dealing with. For you, the fatness created a sense of death. To them, the food restriction feels like death. So it's like where in the hierarchy of needs between food, shelter, and pack tribe, which one is bigger, more threatened? To them, the food is the biggest threat to their survival, even though there is definitely a significant issue in their tribal needs. Right? So which one is bigger in terms of the threat? You know, for you, it was, I am unworthy unless I'm thin. So it's that one. That one creates more issues for you than the actual threat to food.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, but people who are pretty significant binge eaters, they feel if they don't get enough food, that sense of fullness feels safe to them. I got what I deserved. I got it. No one can take that from me. Anyways, different story. Similar issue, different story. Okay. I'm going to stop recording. Thanks for letting me share this.